Hello guys and welcome back to our channel. My name is Peter and today what we're gonna do is pizza Napoletana contemporanea, or in English to say it, contemporary pizza. We will do it all the way through from the beginning. I will show you how to make the pre-fermentation, the Biga, how we will do it, how we will make the Biga, what you have to do exactly from step by step. First of all, just see please up on the board here the exact description, and the ingredients for the Biga. All the measurements are in grams, so please don't look at it. All the liquid and all the solid ingredients are in grams. So we're using 1000 grams of strong flour, which is on the WV markers are over 300. 500 grams of water. The water is cold water, necessarily under 20 degrees Celsius, and 6 grams of fresh yeast. If you want to use dry yeast, you're more than welcome to do it. Up until to 10 grams, I always say is 1 to 1. 10 to 20 will be 1 to 2, so it means that double amount of fresh yeast compared to the dry yeast, and over 20 it's 1 to 3 average, depending, So basically, as said, 6 grams of fresh yeast, 500 grams of water, and 1000 grams of flour, strong flour, very important. As you said, we measured out the flours, and you need a container with a higher wall basically around. You need a good size of rim so it doesn't move out. Then what we do, we measured out the water. The water, we put it into a jug. You're gonna need a wire whisk, and you're gonna need a spatula, something similar to this one. It can be a metal one, a plastic one, it doesn't matter. First, what we're gonna do, we basically put all the yeast into the water, and with the wire whisk, basically, we just gonna dissolve the yeast into the water. So very simple, just basically dissolving the yeast into the water, and then we don't even need the whisk and the dish anymore. We have the flour in the container, no salt, no anything else, no sugar, nothing like that added. So just very simple, 3 ingredients: flour, water, yeast. So you can pour half of the water first into the container, and then what you're gonna do, basically just start shaking and start moving the container. And you let the flour to absorb the water very simply. Once you see that the flour starts to absorb the water, you start taking the spatula and start moving the flour up, basically from one side of the container to the other side. You can add the rest of the water into the container. It is very important that we're not kneading the flour together with the water, basically. You just want it simply to absorb it, because you don't want the gluten structure to actually develop. You want them to be very relaxed, the dough, to say, is under no stress, as usually we say. So it's Biga without any stress in it, so there's no tension inside the dough. You basically just keep doing the process until you see the flour not totally absorbed. The reason why we're using the spatula is basically to remove all the excess parts from the side of the container. So you make sure that nothing sticks to it, because we need all 100% of the product inside. If you can't get everything up with the spatula, and you can finish by hand. It's very important that all the flour is absorbed, so you don't have any dry parts separated. You don't want any powder left out. So once all the water is absorbed, what we need is an airtight container what we can put this into. So you need something like this, what you can seal properly. It can be even a simple bowl, but you wrap up with plastic wrap, it's absolutely fine. Once it's sealed, once you cover the box, you leave it for 1 hour room temperature, and then you put it into the fridge, and you need to leave it to rest in the fridge for 16 to about 48 hours. Ideally, I would say wait for 40 to 48 hours. That's when it's gonna be bringing you the best of it, what it could do to your dough. But after 16 hours, you can already use it. Let's go for a break, have a cup of coffee, and then come back later, see what happened to the Biga. Of course, I have pre-worked a little bit, and I made the same thing in advance yesterday already, actually not yesterday, sorry, the day before yesterday. So it's been rested already for 40 hours in the fridge. The one thing it's very important, once we remove the lid, you need to smell it. And you see that it had risen by double at least. When you smell it, it should smell a little bit sweet and not acidic very much. If it's acidic very much, there's something wrong, either with the flour or the fermentation went on a little bit sideways, might have left outside a little bit for too long on the counter, or it must have been a little bit too hot in your kitchen, or the temperature where you let it out, where you have left it out. So very important that it shouldn't be very, very, very acidic. After we remove it from the container, and then we will put it into a dough machine, and then we will be refreshing the dough. The pizza what we will be making, it will be containing 80% of Biga, which means that it will be refreshed with some flour. So if you look here, I will show you the recipe exactly what that means, and I will carry you through basically on it. 80% of Biga means that the total amount of flour inside the pizza dough, it's already containing 80% of the flour inside the Biga. So it means that if we had used 1 kilo of flour inside the Biga, then that it's 80%. So that is needed to add another 250 grams of flour into it to be 100%. And then we set our goal for 75% of hydration. So aqua is 75%, which means that the total amount of water, because it's already 500 inside the Biga, needs another 440, and then we will need to add, in total we use 3% of salt. So if it's 1250 grams of the flour, because we always calculate according to the flour, then it will be 37.5. And it's very important that I mention it to you here that we do not use iodized salt. It's always sea salt, fine sea salt, and it's not iodized. The iod will be killing your yeast. So it's very important, it's not iodized. And then because it will be contemporary pizza, if you use an electric oven or a gas oven, we add extra virgin olive oil into it, so get a little bit of flexibility in the dough. But if you would be using a wood-fired oven, then I would suggest not to do it. And of course, we need to refresh it a little bit. Since we added flour already into the base, it's another 1.5 grams of fresh yeast need to be added, because as we calculated it originally, we're adding 6 grams of fresh yeast to every single kilo of flour. Now, the one thing you could change here, that you not necessarily need to be using the same flour what we had before. It can be something lighter, or if you want to introduce something else, then you could change it and it could be an easier flour. That's why we will be using also something a little bit different with a lower W marker, but it will be more light as well because it's got a better elasticity, so it will be rising better for us. So, from the talk, let's do it, guys. First, we're gonna add the salt, we're gonna add the yeast, and we're gonna add about half the amount of the water, and the rest we will be adding it gradually into it. One thing is very important, that the water has to be really, really cold, so the yeast doesn't get into reaction straight away, which means it has to be somewhere in between 0 to 4 degrees Celsius. I would say in Fahrenheit it's about 32 to 41, I believe. So just keep it around that temperature, please. It's very, very important. If, the tap water what you have at home, it's a bit too hot, you can add some ice cubes into it, so just cool it down, or just put it into the fridge for overnight and let it to chill down a little bit as well. We set the machine into slow speed and basically just let it go. Usually it's about 7 to 11 minutes roughly for the kneading of the dough. It is very important to check the temperature if you don't trust yourself, because it should not rise above 24 degrees Celsius. The ideal temperature would be somewhere around 20-21 for your dough. So make sure that don't leave it for too long in the machine, especially with the spiral mixer. It can really rise in temperature. So we really need to focus on and to make sure that we don't leave it for too long in the machine. Some pizza chefs believe that it should be working on a slower speed. I do not necessarily agree with it all the time. There is a moment comes with the dough, especially with contemporary dough, that we need to rise the temperature so we can get more air and more water worked into it. So at the beginning, I would say for about 7 minutes, we keep it on a low speed, and then after 7 minutes, once the dough actually forms together, we will add the salt, and then we will increase the speed, and then we will add the rest of the water, and of course we will add the oil, because I will be using an electric oven for it, not a wood-fired oven. You see that the dough starts forming together. What you ideally want, it's a pumpkin shape. If you got a pumpkin shape and the dough will be coming up towards the shape of a pumpkin, then you are doing something good. We've been going for almost about 7 minutes now, and the dough comes together really well. It's got the shape of the pumpkin, what I want. So now is the time when I'm adding the salt into it. When we add the salt, it's very important then we don't put any water in it at that time. We must leave the dough actually itself to work the salt inside itself. So we will be adding the rest of the water after. Also, it is very important to notice that when you add salt into the dough, we are adding dry ingredients into it. So basically the level of dryness will be increasing as well with that quantity. So it's not only the flour which is dry ingredient, the salt is dry ingredient at the same time as well. Okay. We start increasing the speed. At the same time, we can start adding slowly and gently the olive oil into it as well. It's very important, extra virgin olive oil. Not single press, not any other cold press stuff, it's extra virgin. And as you see, it still absorbs the water, so we can gradually adding the water to it. It's very important that we don't put all the water together, we add it gradually. You don't want to make spätzle, you don't want to make anything, for a ragu, this is pizza. So we need to leave the flour to actually absorb the water into it. The last part of the water into it as well. Just finishing with the olive oil. And usually once I have all the ingredients added into, I let the machine run for another 45 seconds so the dough comes really well together. That's it. Now, usually some guys say that you need to leave the dough to rest in the machine for another 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour. Since it's a contemporary dough and we use Biga, and really we stretched the limits of the flour with adding the speed, the air, the X amount of yeast into it, so it doesn't need to rest in the bowl at all. Usually take it out straight away, shape the balls, put it in the containers, and then refrigerate it, not even rest it in room temperature, because the rising process will start immediately. And the one thing which is very important, this is contemporary dough. We're not going to be leaving this for 24 hours or 48 hours in the fridge. This is almost in 3 to 4 hours ready for action, but at a maximum of 6. So guys, if you prepare this at midday, then by 6 o'clock in the evening, rock and roll. You can bake it straight away. You can see the dough, the gluten is fantastic, it's nice, strong. So a little bit of olive oil you can put on your hands, and then we can remove the dough straight away. You see it's soft and everybody gonna say it's sticky. No, it's only sticky in your mind. Trust me, it's very easy. You can work with it. Okay, leave it to rest a little bit, it's about 30 seconds, and then we can start working with it immediately. You can use it with your hands. And once, when I'm stretch it, I always pull a little bit on the side and then move it. scrape everything together. If some parts stayed on the table, you can just pull a little bit under, tuck it under there, and then fold it again, again, and again, to make sure tighten the dough as much as possibly you can. A little bit of extra virgin olive oil on the top, just so it doesn't get dry. Fantastic, you see little air bubbles there. And then we can portion it straight away. Usually the average weight, because it's contemporary pizza, I say don't keep the classic standards. So you can always make it a little bit bigger, because you want, as the Italians say, the cornicione, you know, which is the rim on the side of the pizza crust. You want to make it a bit bigger. You want to make it look larger. If you want to make a canotto, then also, you know, it's better if it's a little bit heavier. So I would say that weigh it somewhere between 280 to 300 grams. So let's portion it out. It's very important when you portion it, you always put it with the oily side towards the surface on the table, so it's easier to remove it from there. And once we're folding it, it's also very, very important that you have a point on the bottom of the bowl, which is, let's say, it's called a folding point, you know, where you want it always to be in the middle. So once the actual dough ball starts rising, you don't want it to be rise on sideways, because then once you start stretching the pizza dough, it will be thinner on one side and thicker on the other side. So make sure that it's always in the middle and it rises perfectly. So it's very important to center shape it. We shaped all the balls. Average, you should be able to gain 6 dough balls from 1 kilo of flour. Now, since, you know, because we increased, so we get 8. Now, straight to the refrigerator, and I would say for about 4 to 6 hours, leave it to rest there, and then we come back and then we will bake our pizzas. So let's take another brew. Our pizza is resting for 4 hours in the fridge already. Look at these beauties. Put a little Parmesan cheese and the beautiful mozzarella cheese. Touch of olive oil, and straight we go to the oven. Guys, it's about 90 seconds, usually 90 seconds to maybe a little bit more for contemporary pizza, but ideally I would say for a margherita 90 seconds top. Look at that beast. Ooh. It's looking good. So let's see. Let's get the scissors. Whoa. Look at that. You can hear it. Soft and crunchy. Exactly what we want from our contemporary pizza. Fantastic. Last but not least, it's one thing which is still missing from this pizza. It is the Maldon sea salt. You know, it's just to basically bring out the flavors of the basil, bring out the flavors of the tomato, bring out the flavors of the cheese. Very, very, very important. Guys, thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please subscribe, tell your friends, visit us. If you are in Hungary, come visit us in our restaurant. But so far, just want to say thank you. And if you enjoyed it, please try to make it at home. I want to see your comments. I want to see how you've done with it. Until then, I'll see you next time. Ciao.